Here's a place where all of us can be safe. Our stories of transformation can be safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while, because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys.
Hey guys, welcome in today. I have Brian McAleer coming in from Australia. So excited. It is about 2 p.m. here for me and about 7 a.m. for him. So we were just having fun talking about time zone differences and what we're actually doing in our lives. He is coming on today from Brian McAleer Coaching Services. He is a life and career coach. His focus is on young adults from the ages of 18 to 30. And one of my favorite things that I think about it is not only is your focus on young adults about, teaching valuable life skills, career direction, not only building confidence during those ages, but the programs are flexible and they're tailor-made for you. So not only do they do one-on-one coaching, they can do facilitated coaching, group coaching, and he's also got an online course that he's going to talk about later in the show. But right now, I just want to introduce him to you folks. Thank you so much, Brian, for coming in.
Thanks, Cheyenne. It's great to be on the show, and thanks for having me.
I'm really excited. I definitely want to get into Brian finding his way into the life coaching business and what really drew you into this line of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it started for me when I was a young adult myself, probably about 20 years of age, and I was starting to take an interest in personal development. That sparked an interest for me because I was a bit stuck in life. I'd been out of school for a couple of years and didn't really have any direction, didn't know what I was doing. Was working in a job that was going nowhere, in a bar, working till 3 o'clock in the morning and not being able to get up early and have a productive day and just feeling pretty fed up with it. But I had some pretty big goals and aspirations. I wanted to travel. I wanted to figure out what my career pathway would be. And I felt it was always about helping people. I've always considered myself to be a helper because I've always been a good listener and been very observant. And I tend to see things from other people's point of view very well. So that was all going on in my head. And I was excited about the future and all these possibilities, but feeling pretty stuck, like I said, in a bit of a dead-end job. So, I started thinking about personal development, goal setting, and just trying to discover who I was. And it really began when I picked up a book called Unlimited Power by Anthony Robbins. It was a really thick book. I'd seen him on the late night infomercials. This was back in 2003. So, there was no YouTube back then, no Facebook. He had those late night infomercials. So I saw him on the TV. I thought, all right, I'll check out this guy. He seems to know what he's talking about. Read his book back to front to back, and just devoured it. And it really got me thinking. And then from there, I started to, explore the whole world of life coaching and personal development. And then I came across a life coach here in Melbourne and went along and had a complimentary session with her. She took me through a process of looking at my life and being honest about what was going on and what I was happy with and what I wasn't happy with. And I could see, hey, this actually works. I could change some things for myself here. But then I got scared and I basically ran away. And I thought, no, I'm going to do this all on my own. A year went by, no change happened. So I went back and saw her again, and she was kind enough to take me through that session one more time. And then I was like, I'm going to take some action here. I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. And I became a client of hers and took on a life coaching journey. So I was about 23 at this point, and then very quickly I started to see some results for myself, and it changed the way I was thinking, I was talking, the way I was interacting with others. My confidence went right up. I started clarifying what my goals were, and I, moving in that direction. And from there, I thought, well, here's my career pathway. I could be a coach. My coach said, you'd make a great coach, Brian. Have you thought about that? And I got excited about that idea. So then I got my coaching qualifications here in Melbourne, and then launched my coaching business back in 2010, and I've been doing it ever since.
I like that story. I was trying to think. I was asking so many questions in my head while you were talking, because there's in those transitional moments that we all have, right? Before we are living our purpose, and then kind of like the mucky waters where you have to reassure yourself a lot, like this is what I want, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be, or before you even get to that point, you're like, what am I supposed to do? All I know about myself is that I actually do care for people and I want to help people in a more in-depth way than what I've been doing before I found this. So when you're talking about, I really had to be honest with myself about my life, what were those first moments like when you actually had to look in the mirror about not necessarily your good habits, but things that were preventing you from being the person that you wanted to be? Or is there something that you can speak on of how you were able to nurture those in a nice way instead of ridiculing yourself for having flaws?
Yeah, 100%. And that's a really important point, I think, because whenever someone is really frustrated with their life situation, like I was, and you're not really self-aware as to what's going on, we play the blame game. We either blame ourselves for things not going well, or we blame others. I was never very big on blaming other people, but I would blame myself. I was very hard on myself. I would say things like, I'm not smart enough, I'm not old enough. Now I say I'm not young enough sometimes, but back then it was like, yeah, I don't have what it takes. I live in the wrong country. I'm surrounded by the wrong people. All these kind of factors I thought were contributing to that. And then I learned about, being more accountable and not blaming myself or others, but trying to just accept myself as I was on my good days and my bad days. And taking some responsibility for the change I wanted to create. I realized that if it had to be, it was up to me. I had to take that action. And then eventually moving towards, a sense of ownership. It's like whatever I do, it's on me. Whatever choices I make, there's going to be either rewards or consequences, and I need to handle both of those. So I became really self-empowered, and my self-awareness really increased. And I think letting go of that habit of looking for excuses and blaming myself or others was the big game changer. And that was hard because we're programmed from a young age to blame and deny things and look for excuses. So it is a hard habit to break. But I found that once I was aware of that, I was able to make that shift. And that sort of whole concept of moving away from blame towards ownership is also called something above the line, below the line. I didn't know that all the way back in 2006, but now I understand what that whole concept is, and that's something I actually coach my clients on. It's like, don't deny what's going on, don't deny your responsibilities, don't look for excuses because they'll just run out, and they'll run their course, and don't blame anyone and don't blame yourself. Moving away from that. So that's what I learned, and that's now what I coach clients on. So that was a huge game changer for me.
Was there also a game changer when you realized that whether through blaming yourself or blaming others, that you were still outsourcing your power to other things, like the realization that you didn't have the right people in your environment, the realization that whether you said your goals out loud or you wanted to have them, did you feel like if you told the people that you were surrounded by that they wouldn't support those enough? Like, what were the turning points in just having that awareness that even the inner circle that you had, technically, no matter how much you loved them or enjoyed your company, wasn't for the betterment of like your higher purpose?
Yeah, it was. At the end of the day, I realized that the only, true opinion about me that matters is my own opinion. That I realized very quickly that some of my friends and family members and people I worked with were open-minded and supportive of my journey, and others weren't. And I did try to convince people early on in my journey that, you've got to have goals. You've got to work on personal development. Everyone needs a coach. I was very adamant about that. And I found that some people didn't like that, and it pushed them away, or I pushed them away, I should say. And it wasn't for everyone. And then I just came to accept, okay, well, this is what works for me. For other people, it's a different philosophy, it's a different path. This is what works for me. And I'm always happy to now talk about it to people and encourage them to look into it. But if coaching or personal development is not their thing, that's fine. That's cool. As long as they find something that works for them and helps them be the best version of themselves and activate their potential. It can be whatever it is for them. That's totally fine. Coaching at the end of the day really is just a tool. It's not the answer to life. It's not the secret solution to every problem. It's a tool. It's a series of tools that have been really helpful for me and have been helpful for a lot of other clients that I've coached. So yeah, accepting that that was my journey and I had to do it, whether I had the acceptance or approval of everyone around me or not, that didn't matter. So a lot of my journey's been about letting go, letting go of those fears, letting go of the need to be accepted and approved, letting go of perfection, letting go of judgment, all of that stuff. And it is hard to let go of that because we form that over time and we cling on to it so tightly because we think that's part of who we are. But then when we let go of that and we sort of clear the clutter in our mind, we realize, no, that's not who I am. I don't need to be perfect. The only person I'm going to judge is myself, and if I don't have everyone's approval and acceptance, that's fine. It just means they don't agree or they don't understand. And it's not my job to try and convince them. I only need to convince myself, right? So it's all about being answerable to yourself first and foremostly, And I find you can try and talk about it to other people and convince them like I used to do, or you can just let your actions speak for themselves. And then after a while, I had people coming up to me and saying, you seem different, Brian. You seem more positive. You're out there. You're doing stuff, And that's been my journey. Is like I've taken a lot of action. I've taken some risks, and some have worked, some haven't. But at the end of the day, I walk my talk. I practice what I preach, and that's been a big takeaway for me from coaching. It's just if you're going to do something, do it, but mean what you do. Don't just do it to try and impress others or because you think that's what you're supposed to do. It's about being authentic and congruent with who you are and just acting on it, and then let the actions speak for themselves.
I absolutely love that. So I've found in my personal development journey, whatever you would like to coin the term, that I've been in situations that I've outgrown and I'm aware that I've outgrown it, and then I will still go around the experiences or the people or whatever I'm supposed to do, and I have the experience again that it's like this cycle, right?
Yep.
And after I left and I kind of, come back to my true self and I'm retrospecting what I just went through, I realized that I had just experienced regression in who I didn't want to be. And having that awareness that I was going back around these places that didn't really benefit who I could see, coming up on the train tracks. It's like your future self waving to you, like, keep going. It's okay. I know it's scary,
Yep.
but you must go. Did you ever have times where you, in those new, like when you're developing that neuroplasticity in your mind to move forward, did you have regressive moments that you were able to retrospect on later and go, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up, but
Yep.
this happened, how am I moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I did then, and I still do today, because I think that's human nature. That, Tony Robbins speaks about the 6 core needs. And I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I know that 2 of them are that we like certainty and predictability, but we also like spontaneity and surprise. So we tend to move back and forth between those 2 ends of the spectrum. And we all have our cycles. We all have our habits. Like I say to my clients, don't try and stop your habits, because habitual behavior is human. Just change your habits, right? So the same thing with a cycle. We all have these cycles. And I'm by no means, have everything about me perfect or aligned exactly the way I want. But the difference now is that I'm more self-aware than I've ever been before. And every year my self-awareness increases more and more. So I'm able to reduce the amount of time it takes to go through a cycle like that. Whereas before, if I hadn't done personal development and coaching, I can't even see where I would be in life, but I know that I would probably still be stuck and just repeating the same things over and over and over again. And that can take months and years and even decades before any change happens. But with coaching, it's about accelerating that change. So instead of taking years, it takes months, or instead of taking months, it takes weeks. Instead of taking weeks, it takes days. And what might have taken you a day to decide, I can decide now in 5 to 10 minutes. So the cycle's still there. Those patterns of human behavior, which we can't get rid of, are still there. But being aware and having those personal development tools just means that you can work through it quicker. And instead of being afraid of that and procrastinating, you look at it and you be like, okay, what's going on in my head right now? Why am I stalling? You know, I'm also a writer and I still encounter writer's block sometimes. So I have methods now to get myself out of writer's block. Like I'll actually step away from my project and write about the fact that I have writer's block. And that actually releases the writer's block. So instead of being like, oh no, I've got writer's block, I need to go and do 50 other things to try and get back into writing, and then which have nothing to do with writing, I'll actually sit down and say, I've got writer's block, I've got writer's block. This is annoying me. This is frustrating. All I want to do is write. And then I discover that I'm actually writing and writing about the problem and confronting it instead of fearing it and putting it off. So it's about accepting that no matter how, I guess, aware and advanced and how much you're progressing in life, all of us are still human and we still have these flaws and quirks and things about us that we don't understand. Even, you know, the experts in personal development today still don't have everything worked out about what makes us tick, but understanding ourselves individually, what makes me tick, what are my trigger points, what are my processes and habits, just be aware of them and accept them. So it's going back to that above the line, below the line. Don't like be ashamed of the fact that you've had a bad day. Just go through the motions of having a bad day because tomorrow will be a better day, right? You've just got to be okay with it because it's all part of the journey.
So one of the things that I've really enjoyed studying on my own end is when I realized that consciously I wanted to be a helper, a good person, and a better version of myself.
Yep.
But I would continuously get pulled, back, whether it was from subconscious programming I didn't know that I still had and kind of had to somehow figure out how to reprogram. But basically at the end of the day, I was struggling with the integration of the new information. It's kind of like when you get on a phone call with a really good friend you haven't talked in a long time, and then you're on the phone for like 4 hours and it's amazing and it's inspiring and you feel seen, and like they tell you about they mirror these problems that you're feeling, only they speak it like in their own life, right? And you're like, oh, that's how you figure that out. And you're noting it in your head. You're like, when I get off the phone, like I finally figured it out,
Yep.
And you go to sleep, wake up, and I don't know if the delta brainwave just took it away or beta took it away, but you wake up, whether you remember like how you were going to fix those problems, there was something faulty in the integration system.
Yep.
Are
Yeah.
there things in your program that are able to pinpoint how to integrate these new teachings into your life so they actually replace the older habits for newer, better habits?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And the key there, as you just said, it's about replacing the habits. So habits is part of human nature. We all have habits, and I coach a lot of young adults, and one of the biggest habits I see with them is lots of computer gaming, lots of procrastination, lots of putting things off. Those are the habits that we tend to master as teenagers and young adults, right? So I don't say to my clients, oh, you've got to stop playing video games and grow up. I'm like, no, play video games. That's all cool. Just moderate the time you're spending on your video games, right? Because if you're spending 6 hours a day on your computer, what else could you be doing with that time? Could you reduce that to maybe 3 hours, then 2 hours, then 1 hour? And then make sure you're using that other time to do stuff that's going to benefit you, and use the video games as a reward. And I use that example because I've taken a lot of clients through that scenario, and then they find that they then don't want to play video games as much because they're getting the same feeling and experience from doing something else. So it's just replacing the habit. As far as the integration goes, I find that, there's so much going on in our head. There's so much information out there, and it's all good. There's a lot of different philosophies out there. There's lots of different leaders. There's countless books, tons of stuff online. It's like, gosh, there's so much information out there. That we're drowning in information, but we're starving for wisdom. So I go back to the cherry picker philosophy. It's like, just pick what you can apply to yourself right now in your current situation. Okay, it doesn't have to be what you think you're going to need to know in 5 years from now, because 5 years will come and pass, and no one really knows what's going to happen to them in 5 years or even next week. But you know what's going on in your current life right now, in your current situation. You know what's going on with work, with your health and fitness, with your relationships, with your lifestyle, with your finances. So as you read information, look at or you're taking it in, look at what is, I guess, invoking a reaction from you. You read stuff and you're like, oh yeah, that's cool, but I think that might be useful later in life when I have kids, or when I launch my business, or when I'm teaching others, for example. And then you read something, it's like, oh yes, that's relevant. I've got this issue with someone at work right now. I could use that. So you read it, and then to apply it, you've got to find, well, how does this relate to me, and how can I apply it into my current life situation through what I'm already doing? Where's in a scenario in my current day where I could use this? And for me, being a writer, the way I apply information is I read it, I write it out in my own words, and I write it again and again and again. And by writing it out, you're I guess, ingraining it into your own mind, and then your mind processes it again. And then I find naturally I just tend to then act out that idea, or I apply that advice somewhere. And one of the habits that helps me do that is journaling. Journaling is really helpful for that. And I'm not the most disciplined journaler. I tend to go through phases, but when I am disciplined, I do what's called morning and evening pages. So it's 5 questions in the morning, 3 questions at night, same questions each morning and each night, and writing in your journal in the morning before you get out of bed, and at night once you're in bed, just before you turn off the light. By doing that, it's the last thought on your mind before you go to bed, and then it's the first thought on your mind when you wake up. And then it helps you identify, what are 3 things I could do today? It could be something really small. Make a phone call, read the next chapter of my book, talk to this person, bring up this idea at the work meeting, whatever it might be. So it's about small steps. What can I apply today? Because what you do today will impact tomorrow, and what you do tomorrow will impact 5 years from now, right? So it's not about trying to overdo yourself or do something too big today that you might be useful in 5 years' time, because all that really exists is right now. So it's just about small actions every day. And then the smaller the actions, the more manageable it is, and the less stress. And it's just more enjoyable because it becomes a part of your everyday life.
That's a great segue into my New Year's Eve resolution questions that I've powered up and ready.
There you go. Excellent.
So, in one of our earlier discussions, we talked about how, everyone gets fired up for New Year's this, whether I'm going to lose weight, whether I'm going to kick this habit, whether I'm going to add in this new habit or be a bigger, better, powerful, more person. And it's going to take 6 weeks, and then it's going to be implemented in my life, and and then about, 2 to 3 weeks into the new year, like the holiday seasons kind of wear off, and we realize how hard it is to introduce these new habits and these new us's, so to speak, into our lives. So, I guess it's a 2-part question. Why does that consistently happen with all of the New Year's stuff that you've observed and work with? And within your program and your experience, what are ways to overcome not giving up 2, 3, 4 weeks into your resolution or your new you?
Yeah, great questions. And for anyone listening right now, you're probably thinking, yeah, great, it's a new year, it's a chance to start fresh. And absolutely, the thing is, you can start fresh anytime you want to, but traditionally the start of a new year is a good time to do that, because once we get through Christmas and New Year's, we have a bit of a break and a bit of a holiday. We've had some downtime, we've rested, we've sort of slowed down, and then the year comes to a bit of a halt, and then a new year starts up. January is typically a quiet month. for a lot of people. So it's a good chance to just have a think about, okay, what did I do last year? What didn't I do? So again, that's a classic example of just our traditions and human behavior is that new year. There's absolutely nothing wrong with waiting until the new year to do that. It seems to be the time when people have the time to do that. Keep in mind, you can do it at any time of the year, but if you prefer to wait till January, absolutely. I do it as well in January. I do a bit of reviewing. I think the answer to your first question is why does it sort of not really happen for most people? Why do they fizzle out and lose steam after those first few weeks of January? And the answer is because they're relying only on motivation. Now, that might sound like a bit of a contradiction. It's like, well, hang on, Brian, don't you need motivation in life? It's like, yes, you do. But motivation is temporary. It's a temporary burst of energy, as I like to call it. What's even better is inspiration. Now, you've heard the saying, what's the inspiration behind the motivation, right? The inspiration is like your reason why. That's your drive. That's your fuel. That's your energy. That's like what you're committed to in life. Your higher calling, your purpose, your mission, your vision, whatever, any of those words that resonate. That's your inspiration. Now, the inspiration is sort of up here. It's in your head and it's in your heart. And it's like what you think about. It's what you write about. It's what you daydream about. It's what you fantasize about. Like, this is how I want my life to be. The motivation is what gets you moving to take action to bring out that inspiration. Now, people who get hooked on New Year's resolutions are usually only relying on motivation, and they're only looking to their external environment for what they think they should change, right? So they see or hear all these ads at the start of the year, lose weight, finally make this the year that you save money, reinvent your career, quit smoking, right? Now, those are all fine resolutions, but they're coming from external sources. The other problem is that they're not very specific, right? And that, to answer the second part of your question, is don't rely just on resolutions. My philosophy is turn a resolution into a solution, right? Because usually a resolution is like, I'm not happy with where I am right now. I didn't achieve this last year, so I'm going to do it this year. I'm finally going to earn my degree. I'm finally going to quit my job and start my business or whatever it might be. And so the second part to your question there is, turn that, how do we make it work? So it's about turning that resolution into a solution. And the solution is really, that's the remedy for the problem. What's the problem? Why do you want to change jobs? The problem is you're not happy in your job. Why do you want to get a degree or finish your studies this year? The problem is like the current qualifications you've got have only taken you so far. You need to learn more. You've hit a bit of a ceiling. Why do you want to lose weight and get fit this year? The problem is you don't like the way you look. You don't like the way you feel, right? So people will take that. They're not aware of it, but that's what's driving the resolution. So an example is like, oh, it's New Year. I'm looking down at myself. I've eaten way too much Christmas ham and turkey. I'm feeling a bit tired and sluggish. I'm going to hit the gym. There'll be heaps of other people there as well. It'll be great. I'll be pumped up. The energy will be really high. And to make sure I'm really committed, I'm going to go to the gym and pay for a full year up front. I'll fork out $900. And I use that example because I did this about 3 times myself when I was younger. And off I'd go to the gym, didn't know how to use the equipment, didn't have a plan, didn't have any fitness goals, felt intimidated by the people there who looked fitter, who looked stronger, who knew what they were doing. I tried to look I knew what I was doing. I thought, okay, great, first day and I'm already wigging out here. Let me listen to some motivational music, listen to some music. After a while, that song didn't work anymore. Let me watch someone over there. I'm watching him